Amid global politics and unrest, there is an organization, rarely mentioned, that has left an imprint on history. It comprises the globe's most influential figures and is rumored to navigate the fates of nations with unseen hands. While the World Economic Forum and the Bilderberg meetings often capture public attention, this assembly operates beneath the radar, shrouded in mystery and speculation. Let's venture into the shadows of this mysterious collective, peeling back the layers of secrecy and the extent of its sway over worldwide events.
You have food, energy, space. You are distant from other centers, so you can, for a longer time, feel rather more independent than interdependent. But things of the world are going so fast that I think that an enlightened leadership in Australia should see down the road that Australia will have to lose some of its on self-decisions.
In 1968, Italian industrialist Aurelio Peccei and Scottish scientist Alexander King founded the Club of Rome, a global think tank whose mission was to raise awareness about the problematic consequences of unchecked economic growth and human activity on the planet's finite resources.
Today, for the first time in human history, there is one mankind, not scattered civilizations in their own environments, with their own fate, but a vast mankind, humankind, which will have to decide all together where we want to go, where we may go.
In 1972, the club commissioned researchers at MIT to build a computer model study called The Limits to Growth. The controversial findings predicted that unchecked population growth and dwindling resources could trigger societal collapse by the mid to late 21st century.
It's not some science fantasy effect from 2001. This electronic display emanating from Australia's largest computer is a picture of the condition, past, present and future of planet Earth. The program was originally devised by a scientist working from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Jay Forrester. It was developed under the auspices of the Club of Rome by an MIT research team to present a complex model of the world and what we humans are doing to it. The program, called World 1, doesn't pretend to be a precise forecast. What it does for the first time in man's history on the planet is to look at the world as one system. It shows that Earth cannot sustain present population and industrial growth for much more than a few decades. It shows that simply cleaning up our car exhausts and making some small effort to limit our families simply isn't enough. It's like an electronic guided tour of our global behaviour since 1900 and where that behaviour will lead us.
In 1972, when we published that first book, Limits to Growth, it provided a lot of data and a computer model and many scenarios, but the basic idea was that the policies existing at that time promoted exponential growth of population and material consumption. Was the first point. The second point, the Earth is finite, there are limits. And then the third point, when you have exponential growth in a finite planet, either you have to stop it yourself or it will be stopped by global problems. So those were the three things. And then we said finally, and if you're going to stop it yourself, the sooner you do that, the more possibilities will exist afterwards.
Despite the draconian notion of stopping population growth by oneself, many proponents of the Club of Rome agreed that sacrifices needed to be made for the greater good. However, critics argue that the study was alarmist and based on flawed methodology. They note that new technologies and resource alternatives were not factored into the equation. The club's unwillingness to address such biased results led many to suspect an ulterior motive: the desire to influence global governance and subtly direct it toward a new world order in which the club's ideals and objectives could flourish. Numerous conspiracy theories arose as a result of this study. For some, the Club of Rome presented a future that required drastic changes in policy and economic practices globally, suggesting a level of coordination and control that stoked fears of a centralized power structure, undermining individual nations' autonomy. In response to the backlash, the club expressed intent to spur global cooperation on sustainability, not enforce global governance. The organization's transparency, diverse membership, and reliance on scientific research denied claims of a hidden agenda. Advocates for the club point out the necessity of international collaboration to address real environmental and economic challenges, suggesting that the push for a sustainable future is often misconstrued as a bid for authoritarian control rather than a pragmatic response to pressing global issues. So should we believe that the Club of Rome intended to bring nations together to solve real global problems? The answer may lie in some pivotal topics that have gone unnoticed by mainstream media and history books. Over the decades, the Club of Rome has issued reports on planetary world management, including potential methods of strict population control policies to conserve dwindling resources and prevent famine, war, and environmental collapse. In the book 2052, A Global Forecast for the Next 40 Years, Jürgen Randers revisits the questions of sustainability and global futures posed by the limits to growth. Randers advocates for expanded access to family planning services, arguing that empowering individuals to plan their families is critical to sustainably managing the Earth's population. This approach, detailed in various sections of the book, suggests that controlling population growth is necessary to ensure that our planet can sustain future generations. By implementing these policies, Randers posits that we can mitigate the severe strain on resources that leads to conflict and ecological disaster. The club has faced accusations of being a modern rehashing of the 18th century Malthusian theory, which argued for population control to prevent exhausting resources. Conspiracy theorists believe the Club of Rome's agenda is driven by an elite group seeking authoritarian control over the world's population. In recent decades, the Club of Rome has shifted focus towards climate change, environmental issues, and income inequality, advocating for increased taxes for the wealthy to reduce income gaps. Despite its lack of official political power, the club boasts a membership of current and former heads of state, UN leaders, prominent scientists, and industrialists from around the globe. They claim to be an informal advisory group, but detractors see their collective influence over politics, finance, science, and the media as insidious.
I just want to read this to you first. This is a quote, this is a public quote by Richard N. Haas, the current president of the Council on Foreign Relations, stated in his article. This is a public article. This is on the Council on Foreign Relations website and Club of Rome site. They're very proud of it. Okay? Very proud of this. State sovereignty must be altered in a globalized era, that a system of world government must be created and sovereignty eliminated in order to fight global warming, as well as terrorism. Moreover, states must be prepared to cede some sovereignty to world bodies if the international system is to function, said Haas. Globalization thus implies that sovereignty is not only becoming weaker in reality, but that it needs to become weaker. States would be wise to weaken sovereignty in order to protect themselves.
Whether the Club of Rome is a passionate voice for environmental conservation or the harbinger of an eco-totalitarian agenda, the truth remains elusive. The group's private meetings and seeming lack of transparency have made them a target of speculation and conspiracy theories for over half a century. What is clear is that this elite club's goals, the halting of economic growth and population management, oppose the values of personal liberty and free market capitalism. Whether you view them as an answer to mankind's self-destructive course or a looming threat to human civilization itself may depend on which side of the ideological spectrum you fall on. The Club of Rome has positioned itself at the vanguard of deciding the very future of our species. But who appointed this small cadre of intellectuals to play God and determine what's best for 8 billion people? The greatest concern is whether in saving the planet from its human infestation, they will destroy the freedom and spirit of humanity itself. The debate rages on. Is it a coincidence that the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, and other high-profile groups and philanthropists have adopted much of this logic? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you are interested in this content, subscribe for future content. Stay sober, stay alert.